Here now, MongoDB's Regional Vice President of Sales, Dejan Zdravkov. Good to have you here, sir.
Thank you very much for having me.
So, government organizations collecting more data than ever before. At times, this can be a little bit overwhelming. It's coming in faster than people can handle a bit. One of the biggest challenges I've seen is how to manage this in a way that actually generates actionable insights for organizations, for agencies. Go into that for me.
Yeah, George, you're absolutely right. Data is growing at an exponential rate. I think in 2022 alone, we're going to create worldwide 97 zettabytes of data. And to compare that number, in 2010, that number was 2 zettabytes of data. So we've gone through a 50x growth of data in the past 12 years alone, and that is not abating. So what we're seeing as well is that the type of data that's being created is primarily non-relational these days, right? It's devices that you have on your health trackers, right? On your fingers, on your phone. I got both of them, it's really tough to store that data and manage that data effectively and gain insights from it with the technology that has been in use for the past 50 years, which really was designed during a time when storage was very expensive, right? So databases were optimized 50 years ago for storage. They weren't optimized for what is desired by the government right now, what is needed by our constituents, which is a better end user experience, right? We're trying to digitize, we're trying to modernize the systems that are out there. And in order to do so, PDFs need to be digitized, right? We need to create web forms for people to apply for a visa, right? For instance, and or make data available to our veterans in a mobile form on a mobile device through a mobile app. That needs to be available 24/7 to anyone throughout the country, right? And the systems, databases that are primarily in use today by the government weren't designed for that day and age, right? They were designed 50 years ago. Storage was expensive. Jobs were 9 to 5, right? You didn't have access. There was no internet. There was no cloud. So really, they don't fit the model or the need that our government has today. The way we can help there is that our model is different. We developed a database by our own developers for developers, right? And for this new day and age, right? So what's happening right now, the most expensive resource that we have in the data center are people, effectively, right? And it's no longer storage. Storage is abundant. It's cheap. It's getting cheaper every day. And that's what we created, and how we're helping agencies, product leads, program leads, developers to build applications is through the document model, which I'm going to dive in a little bit deeper in this conversation. But it's the data is structured in a way that it makes sense for developers. The way you see it in an object, the way you see it in an application is the way it's stored in the database. What that does as a benefit is that it makes developers more productive, because they don't have to make the translation from, what is in the object to how it's stored in the relational database, which is basically translating Word into Excel rows and columns, spread it around the disk for more effective disk usage. This is not what we're optimizing for. What we're optimizing for is for the developer's time, make it available in the cloud, make it available on any device, anywhere, however they want to use it. And that drives better insights, drives better availability, and drives for a better end user experience.
As I'm up at 4:30 in the morning firing off emails, sometimes I do get a little wistful, Dejan, about those 9 to 5 days that you referenced there. You mentioned, and I'm paraphrasing here, but people are our most valuable resource. In this new construct, the data centers of old, of 50 years ago, as you mentioned, how are people used differently? How are they used more effectively?
Yeah, so I think what we need to focus on is we gotta gotta make sure that we talk to the actual business. We gotta talk to the actual program and figure out what it is that they really need or what it is that they're really missing, right? So we have to connect the technical side, which in our mind, we're always focused, 100% focused on developers, right? You got to connect the developers to the business side and really get them both aligned, get them both on the same page, so they can develop and build an application that fits the business's needs 100%. They need to do that quickly, right? And they need to be able to iterate quickly as well, because requirements change over time. We talked about the data creation, right? So maybe today you have certain aspects and certain data types that you are looking for in your application. A month down the road, your requirements might have changed, right? So we need to give developers a platform that is able to adapt to change very, very quickly and deal with any sort of data type, whether it's relational data, just your regular business application that you have, or time card application, or if it's health data that's being generated by a health tracker, device tracker, or an MRI scan, or anything like that, right? Being able to put it all together in one central repository and then making it available to the end user, which could be a consumer, could be a vet, right? In a consumable fashion, so it makes sense to them.
In my research ahead of sitting down here today, I note that MongoDB, the words or phrase open source repeat themselves. Why is that important? How does it relate to this conversation?
Yeah, so open source is important because it gives anyone access to the technology who wants to use it, right? And they have access to the technology forever. There's no agreement that they need to sign. They can just go ahead, they can download it, and they can start using it. What's also important for us as a business is that feedback that we receive from the developer community. Think of it as an outsourced R&D department, right? Where we get user-generated feedback on improvements on the technology. And that helps us with building a better product, again, for those consumers, for those developers who are looking for a modern database technology to build applications faster. So that's one piece of it. The other piece is with the cloud, we take that open source model and we give free access to anyone who wants to use MongoDB in a hosted fashion. So they don't have to download it anymore. They just sign up for a free tier cluster of MongoDB and they can start using it there. And it's free forever. So we're trying to take this open source model to the next level.
One thing that CIOs and CISOs across government have to think about is the Biden administration's recent executive order on cybersecurity. That construct that you mentioned, how does that align with the cyber EO?
Yeah, no, that's a very valid point. It's very important. So we take security very seriously at MongoDB. In-Q-Tel was an early investor in Mongo. We're an alumni of the In-Q-Tel venture fund. And as such, we're being held accountable to make sure we always follow federal cyber rules and federal cyber regulations, and we do. We have a DISA STIG that we keep current. We have a lot of security resources just focused on that. And we're also going through our FedRAMP certification process to make sure that the cloud-hosted version of MongoDB complies with federal standards as well. The biggest difference, I would say, of the community version of MongoDB versus the commercially available versions are that the commercially available versions comply with all the federal cyber mandates, which are multi-factor authentication, as it relates to us, encryption at rest and in transit, as well as audit logging and then automated patching and those types of things. So we comply with those, whether it's in the cloud or on premise, but you would have to get a subscription to get those features.
We mentioned the data deluge, this shift from 97 zettabytes of data from 2 zettabytes of data. Mm-hmm. If I'm a federal IT leader or a local government IT leader, that seems just staggering, overwhelming in some cases. If you are advising these organizations to move to a more modern database solution, but they haven't really gotten started. Where would you have them start?
Yeah, so I think I would start with people. That's always been our focus. That always will be our focus. So if your people are not familiar with MongoDB or a modern database solution, I would talk to them about the benefits of moving to a more modern solution, because they're probably feeling the challenges that you have described, right? They don't know what to do with all this data. They don't know how to manage it, right? So it's a new phenomenon, and we can't solve it with old tools, right? So we have to adopt the technology, we have to adopt the cloud, we have to adopt new tools, and try to solve it that way. And I think personally that MongoDB as a general purpose database gives you not just a technology that solves those problems today, but solves them for the future as well. So we're future-proofing your applications. Where would you start? You can email me at dejan.zdravkov@mongodb.com. That's one way to do it. But we have resources on all media channels, whether it's Spotify podcasts, whether it's YouTube. We have a MongoDB University that's free and accessible to all, or you can just go to our website and do some research there.
Dejan, I don't want to give the audience here the impression that we're glasses half empty people. Sure, data is growing at an exponential rate. There's a lot of challenges associated with that, but is this simultaneously an exciting and interesting time to be in the data field?
Yes, in my opinion, it absolutely is. There are new tools, new technologies out there, and also new use cases that we can now address as we do find ways to capture the new data that's being created. We can build into applications and give it back to users, which ultimately, as a user, from a user's perspective, gives them a better experience. I just took the family to Disney this past weekend, and it's a much, much different experience than it was maybe even 10 years ago, right? Everything is available on a mobile application. You see the wait times. You can make your reservations for the different rides or restaurants, which we wouldn't even dream of just 10 or 15 years ago. So I'm very excited to what the future holds, not just for me as a private consumer, but also for a constituent. I think there's a lot of room for improvement and a lot of room for addressing new use cases with exciting and performant applications.
Well, a wonderful look at modern databases with Dejan Zdravkov from MongoDB. Good to see you, sir.
Thank you.